Voters right now at the polls in Ohio for a special congressional election, and even though Donald Trump isn't on the ballot, he's still a major factor. We'll explain why this race could tell us a lot about November. Then Mount Vernon's police commissioner joins us to talk about the state of police-community relations and what the department is doing to improve things. Also tonight, the latest from the Paul Manafort trial in Virginia. Star witness Rick Gates on the stand again today. The prosecution grilled him, and he spilled a lot of potentially damaging details about Paul Manafort and himself. Now the defense gets its turn. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in for Richard French tonight, and we start with Election Day in several states today, including in Ohio, where a congressional special election is getting national attention.
In a district where Donald Trump won by double digits, all eyes are on Ohio's special election for a seat in the House.
Ohio, I love Ohio.
President Trump visiting just days ago, pushing for Republican congressional candidate Troy Balderson in a tight race against Democrat Danny O'Connor.
Vote for Troy Balderson. He's going to help everybody.
But one Ohio voter and self-described lifelong Republican, Mike McCandless, isn't so sure, campaigning for the Democrat instead.
I feel he's the right candidate for our district.
Ohio, the last major test between Republicans and Democrats before November, but stakes are also high in Kansas, where in a surprise move, President Trump endorsed longtime ally Chris Kobach instead of the state's sitting GOP governor, Jeff Collier.
President Trump has been watching the election. I speak with him regularly, and we've been checking in with each other to see how things are going.
But the president's endorsement ruffling feathers within the Republican establishment.
A victory for Kobach in the primary could pose trouble for Republicans in the fall. They think that Kobach may have a hard time beating Democrats because of his extreme views on immigration.
So what will this race teach us about the midterms coming this fall? For that, we turn to our panel tonight. Charlie King is here. He is the New York co-chairman at Mercury Public Affairs. He was a senior campaign advisor to Andrew Cuomo's re-election campaign, and he's now hosting a new podcast called Big Shot. Perfectly named for you, sir. Welcome back. Dominic Carter next to him, political journalist and author. And on the other side of the table, Scott Vanderhoff, who was the Republican county executive for 5 terms. He's now co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. Scott is also running for the New York State Senate in District 38. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. First question is, what should we be reading out of this special election in Ohio? This is a seat that went 10 points to the Republican and more than that for Donald Trump 2 years ago. You add 10 points to the Democrats' totals in races around our region. John Fasso's in trouble, Leonard Lance is in trouble, Dan Donovan's in trouble. Scott, how much will you be taking from this special election in Ohio and applying it elsewhere?
You know, I really don't. I don't take a lot from these elections. Every one of these, we've asked the question: is it undue influence of Trump or anybody else? A lot of these folks, like the fellow there, they vote on who they think is going to be best for their particular community. So I don't take a lot of stock in it. I think far more interesting are some of the Democratic primaries where you're dealing with that divide in the Democratic Party is going to be interesting.
But Dominic, we've been looking at gaps of 10 points or more that Democrats have been able to improve on in the special elections in this cycle than they were in 2016. I'm curious what you're going to be looking for out of Ohio tonight.
Honestly, I'm not looking for much because even before the results are in, we already know that Ohio is indicative of President Trump is dragging down the Republican Party coast to coast throughout the country. And so this is the last special election before the midterms, but I really believe, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, even though I'm a little dark here, until I'm blue in the face, that the Republicans, they're going to lose the House. I think by all indication, they're in deep trouble. And so to answer your question, the Democrat, in my opinion, even if he doesn't win, already won because he made this race competitive.
Charlie, the Democrat in this race, O'Connor, he's already said he's not going to support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker if he's elected and if Democrats get the majority back. I'm curious, first of all, as the resident Democrat on the panel, what does that tell you about the future of Democratic leadership in the House? And is this a change that Democrats should be considering right now ahead of Election Day?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I've already gotten out my Speedo and my surfboard, and I'm going to ride that Democratic blue wave all the way to November.
Thank goodness this was a political metaphor, because I didn't know where you were going with it. Yeah.
I hope people are not eating at home, because that vision is probably going to scare the heck out of people.
That was a close one.
Hope children are not watching this. Really, that image was really probably censored. But No, I don't think that people should be making changes already, and I think that Nancy Pelosi will be safe at the end of the day. But having said that, I do think that the Democrats have to be mindful of the fact that there is some unrest, and that Nancy Pelosi and others who are in leadership need to take stock of the fact that the change needs to be factored in to the future leadership as we move forward.
This is also an example of a candidate sort of suiting the interest of the region, of the district. This is a more centrist Democrat. This is not an Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Democrat. And we've heard a lot about the leftward yank on the Democratic Party. Does this serve as sort of an alternate lesson to that the party is not necessarily veering to the left as long as there are candidates that fit their districts like this?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that it's very important for everybody to understand, in my view, that it's not so much left or right. It's about, there's a sense of frustration about status quo and where we are, whether you're in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And that is, to me, the lesson to be learned in all of these elections.
Scott, we're hearing a lot of Republicans use that leftward lurch argument among Democrats as a reason why maybe go easy on the Democratic wave or why voters should consider Republicans. We've heard it in districts around the country. We've heard it in some state Senate districts from time to time where we're concerned about that push. Is this the contrary lesson to that? That it's not necessarily, like using an attack that the entire party is moving to the left doesn't necessarily win you an election against a moderate Democrat?
Yeah, no, I think Republicans should be more afraid of moderate Democrats than almost anyone, because I think it doesn't fall into their narrative, you know, the Pelosi scare and what have you. So in a lot of these races, my feeling is Republicans are secretly wanting the more left of the candidates in these primary races to win, so that a more moderate Republican might, or a Republican might win ultimately. But I think Charlie's right about this, and I think it's a really important point. People are just frustrated. I mean, whether you're for Trump, anti-Trump, for Pelosi, people just are, they say the establishment isn't working for me. And I think you'll see this in a lot, I think, in these various primaries that are going on today.
One of the issues that's of interest in this campaign is on health care. And every Democrat has been sounding off, talking more about health care in this cycle than they have in the last 4 cycles combined. But O'Connor is in support of single payer, which is one of those from the left ideas. Is this now the mainstream Democratic position on health care, that it should be single payer health care or Medicare for all?
You know, I don't think we're there yet. I think single payer is a difficult concept for people to wrap their head around and also understand exactly where we're going. I mean, it's hard to explain. It's hard for everybody to get behind. The cost is high. I think it's just very difficult. When you say single payer, I don't think people understand exactly what that means and where we're going with it.
Well, what about Medicare for all, Dominic? People know what Medicare is.
I really believe that we have to be realistic at some points. And this goes back to to the county executive's first point. And it's one that I think hammers home this point that you made the same point, all politics are local to a degree. Because remember now, that this in Ohio, this has been a Republican seat for what, 2 decades, longer than that, I believe?
Yeah, early 80s.
And so you can't have a Democrat in that contest in terms of the local politics coming from the far left and talking about Medicaid for all, because how do you energize the base and energize the voters, all the voters in that district? So all politics are local to a degree. You've got to at least be in the ballpark of where that district lies on the issues.
All right, we're going to take our first break on RFL. When we come back, we're going to look at some local races and some big-name Democrats. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez facing a GOP challenger who's managed to pull just about even in the latest poll. And if you look at the ads, it looks like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is running against Donald Trump. We're going to look at those contests and more next.